Hey y'all, this week we'll be talking elk with our friend Jay Scott. Jay has been chasing elk in some of the best areas in the country for well over 20 years, making him a wealth of knowledge for all things related to elk hunting. We'll discuss some of his favorite scouting, hunting, and calling techniques that can help anyone have a better chance at success this upcoming season. And lastly, I hope you're enjoying this podcast. If you are, do us a big favor, head to iTunes, give us a rating, and write us a review. Enjoy the show. Man, we've been talking about doing this for a while, haven't we?
I know. I'm excited.
Yeah, you're an interesting guy. Yeah, I find myself a lot of the times like scrolling through Instagram and I'll see a post from you pop up and I'm just always usually very jealous of whatever you're doing.
Well, I don't know what to say about that, but it's definitely fun being out here in the Southwest, getting to enjoy a lot of this stuff out here for sure.
Yeah. Where are you at right now?
So I spend the summers in Carbondale, Colorado, which is between Glenwood Springs and Aspen. So It's about dead center in the state.
Okay. Man, I couldn't be any more jealous of your location because right now, August in central Mississippi, like I'll probably just break a sweat just sitting out here outside because it's so humid. I'm just thinking about here. We'll leave for New Mexico in I think 3 weeks, and I'm ready. My mind drifted towards bugling bulls a long time ago.
It's that time of year already, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Every time, like you get a little bit of like, I guess, chill time after turkey season ends, and then those hot summer months set in, and I'm like, this is getting old. Need some time out west. I need some thin air.
Hot and steamy.
Yeah, for sure. So before we get into this, kind of introduce yourself, and I'm curious about your background, like how you got into doing what you do now.
Yeah, so a lot of people ask that question. So I live half the year in Arizona and I live half the year in Colorado. Basically in the summer months when it's really hot in Arizona, I come out here to Colorado, and my wife and I have been doing that for about the last 15 years. What's kind of enabled me to do that is right out of college, I graduated from Arizona State University and got my real estate license and worked real estate really hard from like 1997 till 2008, really hard when the market crashed. So for that, 10, 11 years, I really worked hard in real estate, which has allowed me to do a lot of the hunting and fishing and stuff that I do. At around the same time that I started in real estate, I also got my guide's license in Arizona, and I guided elk hunters for 20 years straight in Arizona in some of the best units, in the state. And as well as that, I guide for Coues deer, bighorn sheep, and other, Gould's turkeys, other animals down there.
Right.
But real estate has really paved the way for me to spend the amount of time that I do, and, be able to spend half the year in Colorado, half the year in Arizona. So, I tell people all the time, if it wasn't for real estate, I may be able to do what I do now, but maybe not to the extent that I do it and the amount of time that I'm able to put into it.
Right. Understood.
So also, with that, I stopped guiding in Arizona, and in 2017, a friend of mine purchased a ranch in Colorado and asked me to be kind of the hunt manager. But my buddies kind of give me a hard time because I'm the hunt manager of a place that doesn't offer hunts. It's basically a family place, and so I catch a lot of flack from my good buddies. Over at the Ot 6 Ranch, my buddies say, you're the hunt manager of a place, but you don't actually do hunts. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of a good gig. And Mr. Will actually knows the owners of the ranch very well, David and Crystal Watts.
Right. Yeah, we've turkey hunted with them in the past.
Yeah. So you know those guys.
Yeah. The Alt 6 Ranch, there was a bull that popped up all last September. I kept seeing him. Called him Creed.
Yeah.
Good gravy. That's a gorgeous bull.
Yeah, he's a really nice bull. We don't have any pictures of him yet, this year. He lives in a really odd place, and he's really hard to get photos of until the rut kicks in. he was around, very visible on the ranch for probably close to 45 days last year. So kind of the big anticipation in this year is to see if he shows up, and starts rutting right in the same areas where he was on the ranch.
Right.
So it's kind of the big, $1 million question of, where is he?
Right.
It's funny, last year we only got one or maybe two pictures of him early in the summer. And even though we've kind of quote unquote carpet bombed the area where he's at, he's pretty elusive. So, time will tell, but hopefully over the next couple weeks he'll show up.
Yeah. So a couple of questions that just popped in my head just talking about that. So I think there's like two, maybe not two, but there's different sectors of like elk hunters. There's guys that are like from somewhere like I'm from that have to, travel a long way to go elk hunting, don't get to go that much. And then there's people like you that are able to spend a lot of time in there. And so just out of like curiosity from like, I don't know if you'd call it from a management standpoint, what kept y'all from wanting to take a bull like Creed last year?
Well, to be honest with you, our season structure was, we're in the Ranching for Wildlife program now. So when the ranch was purchased, you actually have to sit out a full hunting season before you can go into the Ranching for Wildlife. The ranch was purchased in September of 2017, which meant we were already out of that season. Right. And we had to sit out of all of the 2018 season in Ranching for Wildlife, which meant that last year we had to hunt within the Colorado Division of Wildlife general guidelines for the season dates. Gotcha. So the archery hunting that bull wasn't really in the cards. The owner's wife, Crystal, she had wanted to, but just we weren't really prepared. She wasn't really prepared with her bow and her setup and all of that to go right into it. So she actually wanted to try and hunt the bull rifle season. By the time rifle season came, that bull, he gets he goes off in the thick brush and he, goes into the thick parts of the ranch where you can't find him. And so Crystal actually came out and we hunted that bull. But we got a big giant snowstorm in and basically we're flooded out or, fogged out, I should say, for a couple days. And so it just didn't pan out. The reality though is we all kind of deep down wanted to see if we left that bull, what it would be like this year. So, we haven't heard of the bull getting killed. So, I'm pretty sure the bull is still alive. It's just a matter of seeing if he's going to show up in the right spot where we can hunt him. And then the next question is, how big is he going to be? Is he going to be the same, smaller, or bigger? Obviously, we hope that, he has the potential to really, with that frame, just be an incredible bull. Will he put on extra points, kickers? What's he going to do? It's kind of anybody's guess right now.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, you just, again, I keep referring back to your Instagram page. You seem to be one of the better field scorers that I've seen. What did you estimate he would have been last year?
I think one of the hard things is my background is in Arizona, so most all of my field judging experience is, hands on those elk that are on the ground in Arizona, and I honestly haven't had my hands on many elk in Colorado on the ground. With that, I'm kind of hedging my bet there, but with that being said, I was thinking he was probably in the upper 380s, possibly 390. He's not a very wide bull, but he's got really long tine length, which is, when you're judging a bull or, even like a whitetail buck, I mean, tine length is everything, number of points and tine length and then main beam. And for elk, tine length is everything and then main beam, and he had good beams and good tine length. So, I was thinking upper 380s is probably where I'd put him last year.
Yeah, he was gorgeous, man. Like every time I saw a video of him, I was like, God, that is a pretty elk. I mean,
we were able to have some really good encounters. Hunter Meekum, who works with me there at the ranch, we were able to get some really good trail camera photos and have some good video encounters with him in person as well. And we watched him for probably 40 some days, and he was pretty much, you could find him pretty much every day, if not every day, every other day or so. So pretty neat. I hope he shows back up right in the same spot and starts rutting some cows and passing on those genetics.
Yeah. Man, I hope so too. I want to see more videos of him. I want to see pictures of him. He's such a cool bull.
I know.
Let's take that into like some hunting tactics, I guess. So, what are you doing this time of year to prepare for the season? I know you mentioned trail cams and things like that.
Yeah, so on the Odd Six Ranch, it's a little bit different than, say, what a lot of hunters might be faced with on public land. Mm-hmm. In that, on private land, it's really easy to run trail cameras. You don't have to worry about, people stealing the cameras or what have you. But I mean, even a lot of my guide buddies and such in Arizona run a lot of cameras on public land.
Right.
I think the big thing is we just try and run as many cameras as we can on water sources, on different mineral sites and springs and different things where we can catch those bulls in the velvet. One thing to point out is Colorado's really no different than even our elk in Arizona or anywhere else for that matter, in that they tend to summer in a certain area, but then, can move 10 or 15 miles away to rut. So, they have a big range of motion where from summer ground to rutting ground, sometimes they'll be in the exact same spot and sometimes they'll move 15 or 20 miles. I mean, there's cases of bulls in Arizona that, get pictures of them in Unit 9 and they get seen during the rut in Unit 7 West and it's 30 miles away.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing in the summer that people need to realize is, yes, you're getting all these great velvet photos, but really from about September 1st to October 1st, that's when, that's the main rutting time, and that's when it's important that to realize that some of those bulls that you've been watching all summer may move, but on the contrary, some other bulls may move in from other areas to come and rut. So it's a lot like our coos deer. Coos deer are very habitual and in one certain spot, but then when the rut hits, they can move, several miles and be in a totally different range.
Yeah. It's very honest. It's always been intriguing to me. It's relatable to whitetails where we hunt, Mm-hmm. I don't think the how far they move is not as extreme as it would have elk, but it's like every year where we film most of our deer hunts at Cottonmouth. The whitetail rut down there is around December, and it's like it's like a game you can play running those trail cameras. It's just like where did that buck come from? Because we'll always have, they have these certain amount of bucks that we know they're in the area, and then the rut starts, and then you're like, well, he's new, and he's new, and then you'll lose some too. There's some like we don't know where he went, and then after the rut's over, they'll come back.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Sometimes they just show back up and they're gone, and then they come back there and they winter there. So elk are interesting in that some are very homebodies. I mean, we have some bulls that literally I can go find them pretty much in the same meadow all the time. I can get their photos in the summer. I can get them there all year long, pretty much right there. And then we've got other bulls that, come and go, and we've got, it's just interesting. They all have their own personality for sure.
Yeah, I've always found that intriguing as well. What do you see? Like, I've always wondered, because even when we go elk hunting, we're, it's like with Primos, we're in a certain spot for like a week or two, and then we move, I've always thought it'd be really cool, like you on the Alt 6 ranch get to pretty much spend the whole rut cycle in one spot, so you get to watch the whole progression of it. That's got to be pretty wild. So I've got to think you've been able to get like pretty good tabs on, all right, it's starting to kick up now and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And also, like when I guided in Arizona for 20 years, I would spend literally from September 1st all the way into say the first week of October, and you'd be able to watch that progression of the rut. And it's interesting how you learn different parts of the unit, and elk show up typically in same areas, and you go, well, I'm wondering when that big 6x7 bull is going to show up, and all of a sudden, 3 days later he shows up. So the Ot 6 ranch is really no different, and those elk come and go. It's a free range place, and They move around, but you definitely get the, chance to kind of see where they like to hang. I mean, we have certain bulls that will never go on the north end of the ranch, and they'll always be on the south end, and vice versa. We have bulls that always stay on the south, and then we have bulls that show up on both sides or east-west. So you get those bulls that are roamers and they're just constantly moving around, and then you get those bulls that, they just stay on the north end or the south end or the east end or the west end. And I think it's like people too. I mean, everybody's different. Every bull is different, and everybody's got a different personality, and elk are no different.
For sure. It's got to be interesting. How much, like, I'm thinking, cause you, with all the elk hunting experience you have, like, we always have questions about guys that are, they're trying to get out for their first hunt, or, even if they've gone a few times, they just haven't had that much success. So, like if you were to go to a place that you hadn't been to before, however, public land, private land, whatever, just somewhere you haven't hunted, and you had 12 days, how much time, there's a couple questions I could take, like how much emphasis would you put on like just scouting or glassing before you were actually like trying to boots on the ground trying to hunt?
Well, when I go and hunt, I try and harvest a big bull. That's what I'm after. I've shot some big bulls, so I'm trying to shoot the biggest bull, most mature bull that I can. So what I do, if the country allows me to, is I try and find where the best glassing points are on the property or in the unit that I'm hunting. And then I try and spend a morning and an evening on different glassing points, and I'm basically trying to find as many elk as I can. I'm trying to monitor. A lot of guys, I think, want to elk hunt so bad they just dive into the brush and they want the calling aspect of it, which is fine. You just kind of have to decide what you want. Do you want to just have a bugle fest and have to weed through bulls and have lots of fun? Or are you trying to kill a specific bull or a certain bull? If you're trying to kill a certain bull or a certain size bull, I think you have to use your eyes, if you can, to weed through them as much as possible, because you can look at a lot more bulls in big open country, where you can use your eyes and go, okay, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. Okay, this bull, I need to focus some attention over here. Where when you're diving in the middle of them, I call it fixed bayonets and dive into it. You basically have to call them in, spend the time to do that, see if they're what you want, and then move on to the next bull. Well, as you know, it takes quite a bit of time to do that. It's super fun, but it's not as efficient. So I would tell the guys that are looking for, big mature bulls to try and use their eyes as much as possible. I would tell the guys that are just trying to kill a bull, sometimes it's great just to dive in there with them and call and mix it up. Mm-hmm. A lot of elk country is not glassable though. So what I would be doing is checking tracks at water sources. I would be, looking for trails, just looking for sign, just like you would on any other hunt, and trying to put yourself in a position to succeed. Get in the area where the most elk are and start there and then work your way around.
Yeah. That's, I wondered where you're going to go with that, because, like always, when I ask guys that had pretty much everyone I talked to this elk hunter had more experience than me, I consider myself still pretty new to it. And there's always, like even if they do want, like if they're like, they just want to get in there and call and experience that part of it, there is still, a certain element that's always get put, you need to put some sort of effort into scouting first. And I'm interested to be what you said was. It makes sense. I mean, that's what we've learned in the short time I've been doing it, that if we take the time to go out there and kind of, even if we're not going after a specific bull, we kind of know, all right, well, there's a large concentration of elk there. That's a good starting point, rather than just barreling off into the woods and blowing our calls as loud as we can.
Yeah, I mean, I've done both a lot, where you just kind of freelance around and just see what you can strike up. I mean, it's no different than like turkey hunting, where you're just kind of running and gunning and trying to strike a gobble. And I've done the same thing, trying to strike a bugle up and, get a bull bugling and then just go in and see what he is. And that's really fun. To me, I like really isolating and trying to shoot a certain animal and picking one out and being like, that's the one I want to get, and, hunting the whole time and trying to get that bull. So that's fun to me, but early on, just diving in and, getting the bugling and getting the action and getting the experience. I mean, that's one of the things, spending 20 years in Arizona and the best, units in the state, and Arizona's arguably one of the best states in the country for elk. I got lots of at-bats, so I got lots of encounters, and I think that's where, my strengths are when it comes to field judging, when it comes to elk hunting, is I've had so many at-bats, I've had so many experiences. No different than like if you hunted whitetails in a place where you had tons of deer and you got to really witness and monitor these deer, and you got to figure out what they like about, your tree stand setup, what they like about your in and out, your ingress and egress into the tree stand. If you only ran into a buck or so every couple of days, or a doe or two, you wouldn't be able to have those experiences. But, there's some mornings in Arizona when I'd have, 12 to 15 bulls called into bow range, and that's a lot of at-bats. You may take someone in Idaho or Idaho or, Utah or New Mexico, that maybe they only get one or two experiences a day. So, it's just like anything else. The more at-bats you get, the better you get at it.
Yeah, for sure. The more times you get to repeat that process, the more, it's a natural learning curve. You get better at it the more that you do it.
Yeah. I mean, if you only called in 3 turkeys a season, you would probably have less experience than someone that, calls in, 60 or 80 turkeys in a season and gets to see them up close and see what they do, see what they like, see what they don't like. So that's the fun part about elk hunting. I think in some of these better states is you get lots of experience. I've never met an elk I can't spook, and I've made every mistake in the book, and so I've learned a lot of lessons for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I can still remember the first elk trip I went on with Primos. Me and Brad and I still laugh about it because, I was filming, and, we got on, we were actually walking to the spot where Brad wanted to start from, and a bull just rips a bugle, not that far away, and he's like, bird in the hand, right? So he dropped back and starts calling, and it was like a young bull. He probably wouldn't even score 250, but I was telling Brad, I was like, thank God that bull was not one you wanted to shoot, because I was absolutely worthless at my job at filming, which I was supposed to be doing. I'd never seen it. I'd never seen an elk before, much less one at 20 yards, bugle. Right. I was like, and I'm just sitting there with the camera, just, but I'll never forget that. But to your point, through that process and then getting to do it more and more and seeing them more and more, the excitement's still there, but I can hold it together a little bit more. And I pick up, you see enough of them, you start picking up on body language too. He's okay, like that. He didn't like that. He's coming in cautious. He's not cautious at all. He's just looking for a cow, those kind of things.
Yeah, for sure. I have to give a lot of credit to Mr. Will. His his actual VHS tapes back in the early days, the True series, inspired me to really have the passion for elk hunting. And I think I still have some of the old actual big, VHS, the big clunky VHS tapes. And I can just remember watching those guys set up on bulls and, being able to take some of that stuff that I watched in those very first videos and go out into the woods with my own cheap video camera and try and get some of those same experiences. So, whenever I see, Mr. Primos, I always tell him that, he was an inspiration for me, watching his passion for the sport of elk hunting. Yeah. And, I've got to spend quite a bit of time around him. I spent some time with him up in Montana, while he was elk hunting. And, it was kind of a full circle deal where someone that inspired me so much to, get into the sport of elk hunting and then be able to take and put my own spin on it has been a lot of fun. He's an amazing person, and he's a lot of fun, and as you know, very energetic and fun to be around.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've said it before. I think Will without even trying to, inspires everyone that he's around. He's just that kind of a guy. And he's gotten to the point now, he's so much fun to elk hunt with because, like you said, he's just so energetic and he loves calling them in so much. And he honestly, and it's probably kind of like in the same, you know, as kind of in the same situation as you. You know, he's had so much experience with it. He honestly gets more fired up when he calls a bull in for someone else than he does shooting one himself. Like which I can't thank the Lord enough. The first archery elk I killed, he called in for me, and he was just so excited, and it was a great moment. So yeah, I could tell that whole hunt is still etched into my head until the day I die. Since we're talking elk on this podcast, I have to bring up something very exciting. We have had a ton of y'all ask for us to bring the DVDs back. Well, we listened. If you go to Primos.com right now, we just released a brand new elk video. So head on over to the website and check it out. Tell me about, can you remember back, in your early elk hunting days, like some of the first times you called in elk, like what that was? That's always a fun story to hear.
Well, I can tell you one of the very first experiences I had archery elk hunting was actually in Colorado on the over-the-counter tag, and a friend of mine, Scott Hill, him and his dad took me, and we went out hunting, and they kind of went off one way, and they said, okay, Jay, you go this way. I had no idea what I was doing. He had given me an elk call, and I actually got right off the bat making some halfway decent sounds. He was a really good teacher and mentor to me. And anyway, I kind of just walked up this little trail, and I wasn't very far out of camp. We had walked in there with, kind of leading the mules in, and we're in there 3 or 4 miles, and I just kind of walked up this one drainage, and I just kind of made a few cow calls, and I was just kind of standing there. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know anything about setups or anything. So I make a few cow calls, and I heard something kind of down below, and I was like, golly, I think that sounds like an elk. But it at the time, I didn't know it, but it was just kind of some small bulls, and they just kind of were making these little whiny sounds. So I kind of cow called a couple more times, and sure enough, 3 bulls come walking up this trail, and they're walking up like at a 45, and they're just walking straight towards me. And, you know, they're probably 40, 50 yards now, and this is first morning out. Like, this doesn't happen.
Yeah, right.
Here they come, and there's 3 bulls, and they're coming, and I remember, this is what I do remember. I remember drawing my bow back, because they're perfectly walking a trail, and I'm going to have literally about a 15-yard shot on all 3 of them. And I draw my bow back, and I can remember shaking like I saw you doing this bit. I remember shaking, and I don't even remember looking through my peep sight, and I remember about 15 yards, I remember shooting, and all I remember is hearing my aluminum arrow stick in an aspen tree about 2 feet above the first bull, and it's going, and the bulls are standing there looking around, and I'm so shook up, I can't even get another arrow knocked. By the time I get another arrow knocked, they're looking at me, and I spooked the whole thing. And literally my first morning out, I could have had a bull elk if I would have just been able to control myself. And I shot 2 feet over his back, probably never even looked through the peep sight. And literally when the term blacked out, when people say that, I blacked out. Like, I don't remember anything other than, punching the trigger and having those. I still remember that arrow just going ding, 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 like that. And that was my first experience with elk. And, I'd like to say I'm a little calmer, but even when I call in turkeys and even when I call in elk, it's like I still get that rush, and it's still super fun to me. So I'm still like a kid in the candy store when calling elk.
Yeah, that's what keeps you coming back, right? You have an experience like that first off. You almost didn't have a choice, but that's incredible.
It could have been over with the first morning and been like, yep, killed one my first morning. What's so hard about this? And then I realized how hard elk hunting actually was, but that was my first experience.
Yeah. That was a good one. There's a lot of people that hadn't even got to have that experience yet, so golly. Let's talk a little bit about calling. like tactics for calling. That's something always that, that's primarily, what Primos is built on is calls. And, through your experiences, I'm sure you've done plenty of calling in bulls. What do you, okay, let's go like different, like, I tell people all the time, or one of the questions we get all the time because of mistakes we hear is, like people show up, they never elk hunted before, and they show up and they just, from watching too many videos or whatever, they just expect, they just blow this bugle tube and cow call like the elk are just going bugle crazy and the elk are going to run in. How do you dictate how aggressive you're going to get with your calling?
I think I kind of listen to what's going on around me. If the woods are fairly quiet, then I'm going to be a little more subtle and, just kind of work my way into it and work that intensity level. As it gets more intense, I might get more intense. You've been in those mornings before too, where there's elk bugling in every direction and you literally look at your buddy, or if you're, hunting with someone else and you don't even know which way to go because they're bugling all around you. And it's like, now what do we do? I mean, there's 5, 6, 7 bulls bugling in every direction. Well, at that point, I just say pick one, get the wind right, go after them, work that one, and then, go to the next one. But as far as intensity of calling, it's a lot like turkey hunting. If the hens and the gobblers are fired up and going, then I'll jump right in there with them. If it's just kind of a, I'm out here, what's going on? Hey, where are you at? Kind of just a subtle little bugle and some cow calling, then I'll just kind of play to that. I think one of the biggest things people need to realize with elk is, in my opinion, you can't call your way into bulls. In other words, I get them to bugle and then I get the wind right and I close the distance and try and get as close to them as I can before I make another call. And I think what I've witnessed on, 20 years of guiding on public land is guys call, they get a response, they call back. They get a response and then they start moving towards them. Then they call and the bull answers. And what ends up happening a lot of times is those bulls will just keep that, like 100, 150 yard gap between them. They're not going to come to that call. So the biggest tip I can give people is, if you hear them bugling, get the wind in your face, try and get as close to them by using your woodsmanship, your stalking skills. Get in tight, because the tighter you can get to them, if you're making good quality sounds, if you can get, 80 yards, 90 yards or closer, the chances of you getting that elk to come to 40 yards is a lot better than, say, if you're out there at 250 yards and you're exchanging bugles. It's very rare for that bull to leave whatever he's doing to come to you. Mm-hmm. So you have to get in tight to them before you make it happen.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Because like one of Will and Brad's favorite tactics that I learned right off the bat is they love to get find a bull that's bedded down in the middle of the day, figure out where he is, just like you were saying, and then I'm talking tight on him, as dang near as close as we can get without pushing the envelope of spooking cows that are maybe laying nearby. And that's worked. I don't know how many times I've seen them make that work. Same kind of scenario.
Yeah, and something you can throw in that scenario is raking a tree, getting in close to a bull and raking a tree. And what I like to do in that scenario where they're bedded down is, I don't want to make a sound. They sound off, I sneak in, I use my binoculars, I'm looking, okay, I see them, okay, they're 100 yards, okay, I need to close another 20, 25 yards, get in there, and then if if you're hunting with someone, have them just start raking. So in other words, a bull has moved into the bedded elk and he's raking near them almost every time that bull is going to get up and come over to him. You don't have to call at all. Just simple raking a tree to bedded elk, a group of elk, a bull with cows. That bull is going to get up to come over and inspect. I mean, dang sure be ready. But I think raking a tree is something that people don't do enough. Mm-hmm. And you can mix in some calling, but I like sneaking in silent to them and raking, and it drives them nuts. They have to come see what it is.
That's interesting. 'Cause you're playing off that testosterone, right? They want to go see what that other bull is doing over there while he's trying to mess with his cows that he has.
And curiosity, because they're thinking, who is this little pipsqueak that's sneaking into my position and is going to rake? And it just drives them nuts. I think they got to know, is it a big bull? Is it a small? They almost always come over. If I can get, 75 yards from an elk, whether he be bedded or standing, and rake, without making any other sound, they almost always come into bow range.
That's a really good tip. I like that. So I was going to ask, it might have just answered the question, because I was curious, like if one of your hunts you're talking about where you find a specific bull and say it has a lot of cows, is that kind of calling tactic something you would try to employ to get a bull like that?
Yeah, definitely. Big mature herd bulls that have lots of cows are very, very difficult to get close to. For one, without getting spooked, because you've got so many cow eyeballs looking at you.
Right.
And you've got so many noses. So definitely, if you've got a big bull and he's got cows and he's pretty testy and he's, firing off but he's, keeping good track of them and tending them and what have you, get in there tight and rake a tree. And sometimes it's just a simple rake. It's not just breaking every branch. It's just getting in tight and raking, because that bull's thinking, he knows I'm here, and who is this guy to come over here by my harem and rake a tree? So, definitely on big mature bulls, raking works very, very well.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
The other thing is clanking antlers together, even like your rattling that you do, and they don't even have to be elk antlers, but if you can get a little bit of antlers ticking together, something about, just like deer, the curiosity kills the cat. They got to come check it out.
Yeah. I like that. That's a really good tip, and I would agree. I'd feel like that gets really overlooked, more than likely. So, like if you're in a spot where, because I'm sure you've heard stories like this, like 100 times, probably as much as we do. I can't tell you how many times we've heard about people like, man, we got on a herd bull, he was huge, and then it sounds like they just got about 100 yards from him and was calling to him. Like, he would bugle back, but he wouldn't come. Like, well, he has 20 cows with him, he
has no reason to.
Yeah, it's like the same situation when you're calling to a gobbler that's got 15 hens, it's like he's not going to leave that,
Yeah, and I think the bugle is a little bit miscommunicated or misunderstood, in my opinion. I think you got those bulls that, they'll come fight anything, just like there's humans that will, they want to fight at the drop of a hat. But in my opinion, the majority of elk, they don't really want to fight. Now, if you force them to fight and you get in tight to them and then you bugle at them, you give them no choice to either leave or in front of their cows be showed up, so they have to come. But I think the thing that gets misinterpreted is you got to be tight to them to force them to either fight or flight. Yeah. If you're 100, 150 yards, they're like, it's not worth my time to leave all these ladies to come over to you, because then some other bull might slip in. But if you can get tight to them, then bugle at them, you're gonna either have that bull that just comes and stomps on you, or you're gonna have a bull that grabs his cows and leaves. Mm-hmm. I think guys lean a little too much on the bugle and probably should cow call more than bugling. I've called in way more elk cow calling than I have bugling. I think one of the things about the bugle is it's such a long call. So in other words, when you're in the woods and you hear another hunter bugle, even if he's really good, most of the time your ear, you can go, it's not quite right, right?
Right.
Whereas if you hear the same guy blow a cow call, it's such a short call, it's kind of like, I'm not sure if that's a hunter or an elk. I think the elk are the same way. The longer, more drawn-out bugle you give, the more chance they can go, something's not right. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely makes sense.
So yeah. I think people should use the bugle a little more sparingly, use it for locating, use it if you get in really tight and that bull's not coming, try the bugle. But I would lead more with the cow calling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly the kind of stuff I was wanting to hear, because the best calling advice you can get is from people that have spent a lot of time doing it. And I always like hearing people's different tactics and then going as farther into what they're trying to do when they're calling. You know, what, like, I'm doing this because I think the elk are going to respond this way. I think that helps people understand and have a better chance of success when they're out there. So yeah, absolutely. That makes more sense to me. And one thing that you said that I want to key in on is that you use a bugle for locating bulls.
Sure.
That's something. Do you ever use a cow call to try to locate?
Definitely. I actually use a cow call more than I use a bugle. Sometimes I don't even carry a bugle with me.
Okay.
You know, kind of a louder cow call, kind of a, you know, where are you, kind of throwing out there, you know, kind of loud. I don't have any calls right here with me to show you, but definitely lead with the cow call first to get, you know, if you get a response. And then if not, then you can throw out kind of just, I just like to do an immature kind of bull bugle, just a squeal. And then from there, if they respond, then that dictate, you know, then I, can decide what I'm going to do from there.
I know this is an elk podcast, but I can't ignore the fact that whitetail season is slipping up on us quickly. It's time to get the trail cameras out, start thinking about food plots, mineral licks, the whole 9 yards. All of us over here have had tremendous results out of the takeout system. Head on over to Primos.com and receive free shipping on orders of $75 and more. Gotcha. So that kind of just sets the whole pace of where you're going to go from there. Makes sense.
And I'm a big cow caller. I've always had way more success cow calling, and I think the key is you want to sound as nasally as possible.
Mm-hmm.
The key is you want to open your mouth rather than close your mouth to get that, you know, that more sound. And I think a lot of people go, ew, ew, and get, you know, they close their mouth, and I think it reverses the sound that you actually need to hear,
mm-hmm.
or that the elk want to hear.
Right. I think honestly it's kind of worked the same way for me with turkeys. What made me get better at cow calling is just being out there and hearing actual cows, because it gave me like this is what I need to mimic, you know?
Yeah, and there's so many people that have that musical ear that they hear a sound and then they can mimic that. I mean, and that's one of the biggest things is if you can ever put yourself in a position where you hear a lot of elk, if you have that musical ear, so to speak, you can definitely get to where your mimic ability is a lot better. If you don't hear many cows, it's kind of hard to go, oh, that's what that nasally sounds like in the woods. That's what a real elk sounds like. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, again, it goes back to as many at-bats as you can get.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could not agree more. The more you do it, the better you're going to be. It's just a fact of life. Well, I've had you on for 40 minutes now. I know I'm eating up a lot of your time, but there's one question I definitely want to get to. Like, what are some things that you, like, if I'm going to go elk hunting, I'm going to have, you know, I'm going to have these with me, be it in your pack or whatever. What are your things that you will not go without?
Well, for one, obviously you want to have a sharp knife. You got to have a headlamp with extra batteries, because it always seems that you're walking out in the dark, whether it be back to camp or if you're truck hunting or, you know, truck camping, have extra batteries. I'm a big proponent of Onyx maps, where you can know where you're at, where public land, private land. I like the tracking feature where you can, you know, walk into an area and know that if it got pitch black dark, even if your batteries on your headlamp went out, you could follow your track back. That's huge. Mm-hmm. I think too, having something that you can wear on your feet to soften the sound of your feet. You know, in some of the, states where it's arid, like Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, it can be crunchy walking. So, you know, there's bunch of different types of things you can wear on your feet, but just something to dampen that sound. That's huge. You know, obviously carry game bags with you. And then your calls, you know, I think, you know, and Primos has led the way for a long, long time in making elk calls, you know, with the hyperlip singles and hyperlip doubles. And, you know, those were, I mean, honestly, I still have a hyperlip single and a hyperlip double. Yeah. You know, they're still a phenomenal call. I have some that are, you know, they're probably 15 years old. I mean, and they still work great. So having calls that you can lean on, and have confidence with. You have to call with confidence. If you're not calling with confidence, you might as well not call at all. Having a bugle that you can throw out there, whether you do challenge bugles and do all that, or if you're just using it for location. But you have to have calls. It's paramount that you go into the woods with confidence. If you're not confident, you might as well not do it. I say that, but the only way to gain experience is to do it. So, but if it comes down to like you have to kill a bull and you only have 3 days and you're not confident with your calling, well, let them bugle and sneak in on them and shoot them. Or practice more. I think people need to practice a lot more.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. We've said that on here before. Like, a lot of your success level depends on how confident you are in what you have and what you can do. I 100% believe in that.
Yeah.
100%. Well, man, thank you for your time today. Thank you for cutting the time out of your day. And honestly, man, I learned some stuff from this conversation. Like, you're a very interesting guy, and you've been doing this for a long time, and so you're a good source of information on the subject of elk hunting. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Are you going to get to go to the elk woods this year? Where are you headed?
Absolutely. We're going to New Mexico, and I have a bow tag, which I'm not excited about at all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I've been shooting my bow every day, and then Will, Brad, myself, Jordan, Troy, and then our friend Will Walker will all be in New Mexico with archery tags, and like Jordan, that'll be he's filmed I don't know how many elk hunts, but he's never killed one before, so he's going after his first archery bull. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and then the rest of us, it's going to be, like I said, that's all I've been thinking about for the past few days. I've been watching old videos and old truth videos from way back when, like you were talking about, just trying to get myself more fired up than I need to be, because I still got like 3 weeks before we go, but I cannot wait.
Well, one of the things that I picked up, early on from those videos is watching like Will Walker. He's an incredible archer, and knowing when to draw, and then just like hunting your whitetails. I mean, you've got to kind of slow everything down and focus. Go through your pre-shot routine and do everything the same that you've been practicing, and pick your spot, and just try and slow down and know when to draw, learn when to draw. I think that's a huge thing. And with elk, you can get away with a lot more than you can on other animals. And even if they're coming like head on, a lot of guys freeze up and they don't want to draw. I'd recommend go ahead, let them get pretty close, and then draw your bow, because a lot of times they're going to stop. They may spook, but they're always going to turn around and look at you. So don't be afraid to draw your bow. And then don't get smashed back in a bunch of brush. Kind of get out in front of something rather than behind something.
Right.
When I hunt with a lot of archers, I think they get thinking that they got to get back in the brush and hide. I do the opposite. I'm going to get in front of something, let my camo do the work, and just remain still when those elk are coming in. And then don't be afraid to draw your bow. I think a lot of people say, I'm like, well, how come you didn't shoot? And they're like, well, they were right there. And I'm like, you can get away with a lot more with elk. And a lot of times they're going to stop and give you that second chance. They're going to stop. They may wheel and run out 5 yards, but they're always going to turn around and look back.
And usually when they do that, they give you a lot of the times, that awesome like quarter and away shot where you can just, I love a quarter and away shot. You just bury it in that offside shoulder, and then the job is done. Yeah, I can remember, and I tell everybody, like I said, the only archery bull I've killed with Will, I tell us the biggest advantage I had by far was being able to hunt 4 previous seasons with all those guys and watch them do it, and watch what they did. And this was like anything that I do right is not any credit to me. I've either messed up enough times that I learned how to do it right, or I learned from somebody else. And so from watching, this was specifically from, I remember Brad highlighting it from a hunt that I filmed him kill a bull. If you watch the video of the bull I killed, from Jordan's camera angle, it looks like, when I draw back, it looks like there's nothing but air between me and the bull. But from where I was sitting, there was a fallen down tree, like a big old tree trunk, and when his head went right behind that tree trunk, I just went, and he never even, I think he heard, like, just because I kind of
just being fired up, my draw cycle
settled in.
Wasn't as it was. He never saw anything. And I learned that from watching Brad, just to your point. And also to your point, like you said about the brush, like, we use getting in front of brush, and then we use shadows a lot of the times. If we can get hidden in a shadow, you're golden most of the time.
Absolutely. Yep. Try and always set up in a shadow. That's one of the best tips you could give someone. I mean, if you stand still, it's amazing. If you just stand still and you don't have the sun on you, you can get away with a lot with elk. If you don't move, they'll walk right by you.
Absolutely. Well,
right on, buddy. Well, congrats. And congrats on your first bull, and I'm looking forward to seeing you get your second this year. And thanks for having me on. Thanks for thinking of me, and good luck this season. Tell all the guys at Primos hello.
I'll sure do it. I can't thank you enough for coming on. Guys, Jay Scott, check him out on Instagram, Jay Scott Outdoors. Like, if you have an elk itch that needs scratching, you can follow Jay's page, and it will be fulfilled. Like I said, I'm always looking at it.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap this up. As always, if you have any questions, send them into the page, and thank you for listening to the Speak the Language podcast.